Good evening, and sorry about that. Do you know when technology is a difficult thing in it, where you kind of like, sorting everything out, and all of a sudden you get everything ready, get your notes ready, gets everything ready, and all of a sudden it just goes kaput on you.
I know. It's very frustrating.
It is, isn't it? It is really bad, isn't it? Um, and for a second, we're still getting some feedback from the television. Right, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Don't forget, if you've got any questions, put them in your left-hand side. People on the radio, please, well, if you've got any questions for Jane, can you make sure that you do it 10 minutes prior to, not now, because we can't kind of like handle all the messages coming in because there's no one there at the moment. So thank you very much. Anyway, Jane, hello, and thank you very much for coming back.
That's fine. Pleasure.
Thank you. We finished off last time because I was amazed on what you did, and I wrote a poster out today, and I put down on it, before I go, and I have never thought about it. And last time I kind of like sat down and thought about kind of doing something, um, was after talking to you. And I think we do need to plan out what's going to happen, when we die, and what's going to happen next, and because it'd be good for our family too, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the main reason, because let's face it, you're not going to be around because you're going to be dead. So you won't care, really, because it's not going to affect you what happens after you've died, but it is going to affect your family. And that's why it's a very selfless thing to do, to think about this in advance. And it's not an easy thing to do. Nobody wants to look at the fact that actually they are going to die one day. And however, if you think about it, it's a major occasion it's in your life, of course, but in the lives of everybody else around you. And for major occasions, births, weddings, big parties, like our 60th or 70th, that sort of thing, we plan in advance, and it takes quite a lot to do that. But we don't tend to plan for the absolute end, which means we leave our family with a lot to do in a short space of time. And you can really make that easier for them by doing it in advance, by at least doing some of it in advance.
Yeah. I was reading your book, reading your Facebook today, and I was doing all my research, what I usually do. And what made me chuckle, it was Life and Death Lady. And I was thinking, wow, there you go, Life and Death Lady. What did you write that title for?
Well, I was constricted by the number of letters that I could get in, have to say. But the fact is that when you are willing to face death, and the fact that it is an end, then actually the really strange thing is it kind of brings you to life more. So even though you might be having a wonderful life right now and you can't imagine that it would get any better, there is something about being willing to look forward, to address the end of things in the ways that you can right now, and there's plenty of them, plenty of practical stuff, that once that's taken care of, it frees you up to enjoy your life even more right now. And that's got to be a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why I describe myself as both a life and a death lady. I might not have said lady. I mean, it's not a very used word these days, is it? But it's all I could fit in.
Well, to me, you are a lady.
Thank you.
Because your husband died in 2011, and did that kind of like give you the drive to do what you're doing today?
Well, it didn't quite happen like that, because I knew that after he died, I knew that I would write about it, because I had been already writing. I had been writing a blog, and writing for me is a way of really helping to process the things that happen in life, get them out on paper, sort of thing. So that I knew I would write about it at some point. And what I didn't know was that book would become a book that people really responded to, and particularly to the chapter where I'd written about these questions that I asked Philip before he died, which were really practical ones. Like, what are your passwords, and what kind of coffin did he want, and that kind of thing. And people's readers said to me, there was about 10 of them said in the space of 1 week, I need to do this too. And eventually the penny dropped and I thought, oh, right, well, maybe I should help them do it. And because my background had been as a counsellor and a coach and running personal growth groups, I knew what to do. So it was easy for me to put together a course, and it filled up, and I could have sold it twice over. And so then that's how we began, really, just responding to what people had said to me.
Yeah, because you got gifted by grief. You know, what was the idea behind that book then?
Well, I always say, you know, that if you're newly bereaved, the title of that book, Gifted by Grief, is going to be one that will make you definitely not want to read the book, because when you're first bereaved, you don't think there's any gift in it. Of course you don't. And even sometimes later, it's really hard to find that. But my take on life is that there's always something positive to learn from whatever experience it is that you have, whether it's a good one or a bad one or whatever. So I knew in theory that when Philip first died, that there would probably be a gift there somewhere for me, although I wasn't at all ready to look for it and I wasn't interested. But eventually, you know, various kinds of spiritual insights came to me that was really, really important and that I was incredibly grateful for. And they wouldn't have happened, I don't think, without him having died. And I thought actually those would be the things that people would be interested in, but actually they were interested in these practical things. So I could also say, while the spiritual change for me was a great gift and probably the greatest gift, there's been a gift as well in being able to set up this social enterprise that I now run and bringing this practical work to other people, because it makes such a difference to the families.
Definitely. Then all of a sudden, then after that, you got Before I Go. The book came out Before I Go. And what I could see, that was a bestseller, wasn't it?
Well, it depends on how you describe a bestseller, but it sold quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think in a way it came before its time, because there's more people now who are open to this subject and willing to talk about it. But I think it's a combination of it's kind of like half exercises and questions for you to really consider about your own life. And the other half is the background information that allows you to think about the sorts of things that you really need to think about and to ponder before you can answer the questions. So if you like, it's kind of like the workshop that I used to do, but in a book. If you're the kind of person that will read a book and there's an exercise and then you'll do it, which some people are, then that's all you need to do to get your end of life plan together. Just get that book and then do what I suggest you do.
Yeah. Then not only that, you got the work, you know, they kind of like the workbook, you know, Before I Go, you know, the workbook.
Well, I did that because I mean, that really is a workbook. That's just got all the questions with a space to write in what your answers are. And again, I did that because some people asked for it. You know, they didn't want to just you can just buy the ordinary book and make your own notes somewhere and put it into a folder. There's no problem with that at all. But some people like to have a nice, tidy actual workbook on their bookshelf, which is what this is. And of course you can keep your will in there, you can keep any other paper documentation that you've got. So yeah, you can do it that way as well.
Yeah. And plus all the blogging you do, because you do a lot of that, don't you, as well?
Well, because you see, when you're somebody who's motivated to write, and I am, it kind of just, I view the world as if through the lens that says, oh, I could write about that, or oh, I must say that to whoever it is, you know. So even if I often go out for a walk in the early morning, and sometimes I'll see, I might take a photograph, or I will see something that actually, like the other day, I came across a bunch of flowers that had been left by the roadside where somebody had died, and they had been there quite a long time. I'd seen them before, but they were in cellophane, and so they had died, completely died, and they were, you know, rotting inside the cellophane. And I took a photo of that, and I did do a blog post about that at some point. I can't remember when, but that's the sort of thing, I just like writing.
Yeah, and there was a quote on your website that really enjoyed as well. It says, "Before I go myself, my aim is that 1 million people are sitting down with their completed end of life plan in their hands, feeling relieved and at peace that is finally done, and that that they enjoy themselves in the process." What a quote!
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. I mean, 1 million people is an awful lot, and it may or may not happen in my lifetime, but I love, the relief and the feeling of being at peace once you've got this kind of thing taken care of. That's one of the things that people don't realize is going to happen. And it does happen. And so, yes, the whole thing about sitting down with a glass of wine or a pint of beer, or whatever is your thing, that's the way of celebrating that you've got this far. And that's what I want to encourage people to do.
Yeah. I want to touch on your. It says here about your. What was it here? It's. Hang on for a second. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
I'm looking at your kind of like big workbook guide. Now, what I was listening to some of this, and this was interesting. What was? How did you get to that point that you wanted to do that? Listen.
How did I get to which point was that?
To the point where you wanted to do the big workbook guide.
Well, it felt at the time, it didn't feel like it was an idea that I had. It just felt like life was sort of showing up and saying in the form of these other people who were saying, I need to answer these questions as well. And so, there was, by the time several people had done that, I was like, oh, maybe this is a message from life itself telling me that I need to do something about this. And so I just responded. That's what it felt like. I just responded. How things happen in life, don't they? And how we respond to them is often what leads us down a different route. And that is what happened to me. Because at the time I was working as a small business coach. I was helping people with small businesses to do better. And I'd written Gifted by Grief. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just get, maybe a few more people will come to me because they want some grief counseling or something. And that was fine. But that's not what happened. So I felt like I had to go with what was actually happening and was being presented to me.
Yeah. And some people these days, they don't want to kind of like, they don't really want to make a plan, do they? Because they're afraid of dying. They're afraid of losing their loved ones. What do you say about that when people...
Well, do you know what? It's most people are like that. More people than not. It's like if I think about dying, I might actually make it happen sooner. Or they're superstitious about it, or they are afraid of offending somebody if they dare to mention the death word, or they will cause upset without meaning to. Like all of which are completely valid. But the fact is, we have those kinds of thoughts because we're not used to talking about it. So my role in life, I think, is to help people feel at ease by talking about something that is going to happen to all of us. And the more that we put our heads in the sand and ignore it, the more difficult it is to actually deal with it when the time comes.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So it's much better to be talking about it beforehand, to be planning for it if you can. I don't mean planning for it planning in order to make it happen, but planning so that when it does happen, it'll be easier for everybody, including you, because the statistics have shown that if you even if, for example, you make it known that you would prefer to die at home than in a hospital or in a hospice or something like that, then the likelihood of that happening is much greater than if you hadn't had anything. If you didn't say anything at all to anybody, which is what unfortunately most people do.
Yeah, what I did when I was around about 18, I had vegan general knocked on my door, and since then I've been with them ever since. And I've got a plan, I've got a plan in kind of like got a plan there, and also I've got like any if I died, then it's all sorted. You know what I mean? So
yeah, brilliant.
But the trouble is, but for many people, they don't even plan it, do they? And I was seeing, like my own family, what they've done is when my mum died, it was like panic. Oh, we got to go to the undertaker. What
Yeah,
is the right undertaker? We got to do this, we got to do that, and nothing is planned
yeah,
until the family gets, all wind up and everything, and a lot of
yeah.
bickering.
I know, and I think, unless you have already experienced the death of somebody very close to you, then you don't realize the impact that grief can have, and that the impact that grief has shows up in all sorts of different ways. But really common ones are not thinking straight, finding it really hard to make
Mm,
decisions, not wanting, not being able to physically do it, because sometimes grief can show up as physical aches and pains. I remember I was amazed. I never got headaches before Philip had died, but afterwards I would get a headache that wouldn't go away
mm,
with pills. It was amazing. In fact, all I could do to make it go away was to lie down and watch ridiculous television during the day. And I just had to do that until the headache went. And it was my body's way of coping, I guess. So
mm,
I wouldn't have been able to make decisions that needed to be made at that time. I just couldn't do it.
mm. And sorry about the phone.
Right.
Sorry about that. But the trouble is, you'll see, but when someone dies, when a family member dies, is close to you, you're in shock anyway, aren't you? Really, you're in
Yes.
shock because you're not expecting it. They, automatically they die. I remember my mum kind of like all of a sudden kind of she was there in the evening, then by 9 o'clock in the morning she died, and
Wow.
yeah, she died. And the trouble is, she went, and I was thinking to myself, well, and my dad froze, all my family froze, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, it's down to me.
Yeah.
And I should run around trying to sort things out, got the flow, do all this. And I was thinking, hang on for a second, and I didn't have time to grieve at all.
Exactly. So that's, I know that some people think that it's useful or helpful to be able to be very busy after somebody has died. But the trouble is, if you don't have a choice about that, then that can make it more difficult. So when you plan in advance in the way that I'm talking about, one of the benefits is that you're more easily able to grieve well. And, grieving well, that kind of concept is a bit like the same sort of concept as a good death. It's like,
Mm,
is there such a thing? Can you grieve well? But you can
mm,
actually,
mm, yeah,
because it's a natural thing. When you lose somebody or something or a pet or something like that, it's a major loss in your life. And grief is an appropriate response, but there has to be room for it. And if you've got too much stuff to have to deal with, especially immediately, that can be very difficult, make it very difficult.
yeah. To me, it just kind of like everything was done, and next minute, the thing was all over done with, and I thought, right, okay. Then about 3 months afterwards, I went to visit the where my mum's ashes were, done and buried and everything, and that was it. I lost it.
Yeah, yeah,
It all came, it all builded up and came back to me, and I just kind of completely lost control. And
yeah,
I think, and that's why I actually keep on asking you back, because many listeners of mine, they when you came on last time, they said to me, they said, you've got to get her back, Steve, because we're learning more and more about this. And
yeah.
people need to know that we need to plan if not our own deaths, but our family ones too.
Exactly. So, especially if most people, let's be honest, most people don't really think about their own end of life until they're probably 50 at the earliest, because
Mm,
it's around about that time that you realize that you might have already lived more than what there is left to live.
mm,
But, if you are around about that age, then you will probably have elderly parents or parents that are getting
mm,
older. And they're the people that their death is going to affect you, like we've just heard from your story. And
mm,
you can encourage your parents to talk about this by being natural about it.
mm.
Um, I know some people say, I can't talk about this to my parents. They would think I'm bumping them off, wanting to bump them off, But actually, I found that when adult children are willing to raise the subject, more often than not, their parents have been glad that it's been raised because they've been thinking about it as well and not daring to say anything either. So it really pays to not to just blurt out something like, you know, do you know if you want to be buried or cremated or whatever, but to maybe say you need to have a context if you're going to say something. So you might use, you know, somebody's recent death, or you could even use the fact that Prince Philip died and his thing was all planned. Like, he would never have had that Land Rover at all if he hadn't dictated what he wanted.
I've got, my dad is in his 80s now, and we were talking about it a few months ago about what would happen if, you know, if he dies and everything. And he just said, get me an ordinary cardboard box and bury me in it.
Yeah.
But, you know, okay, he's got a bit of a sense of humor, but the trouble is, we talked about it, and he said, this is what I want, this is what I want. And now we know now we know what he wants.
Yeah. And do you know what, Steve? There's an added benefit, and I only discovered this after my parents died. My parents both died in the same week in 2018, which was a pretty intense time.
The same week?
Yeah, it was really, my dad died suddenly, and then my mum, who already had motor neurone disease, she died a week later. I think she died of a broken heart, knowing that, you know, she was already on the way out. But anyway, they had both done written plans. They both filled in one of my workbooks, and it was so wonderful to go through those and know that we were giving them what they knew that we were going to give them, if you see what I mean. You know, it was like, it felt really good. It was some comfort in a time that was really hard, really hard.
Yeah, it's so difficult. How can we kind of really kind of accept that one day that we are going to die? I know it's a bit morbid. You know, I've got some questions anyway that the audience wants to on the radio. Hi, Steve. Very good as usual. Can you ask Jane what I can do about sorting the plan out? Because really, my family hasn't made a plan out. We don't even think about that. And what can we do? What can they actually do, Jane? What can they kind of like say, right, okay, we need to make a plan out for our family?
Well, the very first thing is to start talking about it. But from a practical point of view, you can just visit my website or go to Amazon and get the book. I mean, the cheapest way to do it is just go to Amazon and get my book, Before I Go, the Essential Guide to Creating a Good End of Life Plan. Use that in the family as a discussion point. Get everybody to make notes of what they want as you're discussing it, as you go along. And treat it as a project. You know, it's a project that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it will take some time to do it. But I've known families who have agreed that they would get together, once a week or once every fortnight or something, just for an hour maybe, to discuss a particular thing, a particular aspect. But the thing that I would say is, if you don't have a will, then that's really important. Because it's much, much messier and more expensive, much more expensive if you die without a will. And if you don't have a power of attorney, that is the person who represents you if you are not able to speak for yourself, that's before you die, then that's also really important as well to do. And if you go to my website, beforeigosolutions.com, you'll find articles about that sort of thing on there that you can just read for free, and it will guide you to the right place.
Yeah. I was going to go through your articles anyway. Some other time I was hoping to get you back again, because lots of people were getting loads of questions and people want to.
Yeah.
So I want to work on that next time, but the wills and everything, if I can.
Yeah.
I've got another person here. Ben, hello Ben, how are you? Hi Steve, can I ask at the website page? What's your website?
It's beforeigosolutions.com. Beforeigosolutions.com. All one word.
There you go. Okay. And what else we got in here? Hi Steve, very good show. Thank you very much. That's okay. Love Jane. Tell Jane I would just made my plan out today. I watched her last time. I thought she was excellent. Um, I'm in the middle of wanting to get her book. I'm on her website now. There you
Great.
go. Go. How about buying my book sometime? I ain't finished mine yet, but mine's on the way. Uh, yeah, I ain't finished it yet. Well, it's finished, but it's not properly. Um, what else we got? Gosh, yep. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But see, the trouble is, someone just yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Someone's just. I'm keep on looking up. It's scrolling down and it's going so fast, and I'm trying to
Yeah,
go. Oh,
that's okay. That's okay.
yeah. This question just popped up here from Luke, and he says, Steve, I can understand where you're coming from when you said that the family can be really confused, especially when all of a sudden your mum and dad or a family member dies all of a sudden
Yeah,
because there's a because it's a different you're in a different world, aren't you? Because all the shots come to you, you know,
yeah.
and you're panicking what you're going to do next. You know, everything is in the air, and it's a good idea. Luke's saying, brilliant idea. Why haven't I heard about this before? All we hear about is wills, but not the planning bit.
Exactly. And so people do know about wills and they probably know about the existence of funerals, but they don't necessarily know about the other things that you need to put in place in order to have what I would call a good end of life plan. And now I mentioned the power of attorney thing. So uh, a power of attorney covers both your finances. That's one of them, and the other one is your for your healthcare, and it's all in case you
Yeah,
can't cope any longer. Now the thing is, that's really important these days because we're all living longer, but we're not necessarily living in such good health during
yeah,
those last few years. So it might be impossible. I can't really imagine a time when I wouldn't be able to look after my own finances or be able to tell the doctors what I wanted if I was ill. But I've seen it happen. I've
yeah,
seen it
yeah,
happen. So you need to have somebody in place to speak on your behalf. And one of the most shocking things that people I think don't understand is that your next of kin can't do that. That's not that's not legal. Your
yeah,
next of kin is allowed to go and visit you in hospital, but they're not the person that can represent you if you can't make decisions for yourself. That is your power of attorney. So I explain all that in the book and I go into much more
yeah,
detail about that and also the resources where you can go and
yeah,
sort that out. It does cost a little bit of money, but it's definitely worth putting in
yeah,
place.
yeah.
Save
Yeah,
you a lot
'cause
in the long run.
I was going to touch on that, next time with in my notes. Sorry, I was just looking at my notes now,
Okay.
and because I was going to talk about the wills and the the power of attorney and everything, because because people need to know that. You
Yeah,
know,
they do.
not
They do.
many not many people know that.
No,
And
they don't know. They don't know. And a large part of our work is about educating people and letting them know about these things. And then the second part is helping them actually take action. Because even when you know about this kind of stuff, it's not always easy to do it.
no,
So
I know,
that's why we
yeah,
do it.
yeah, because people kind of like but the trouble is, you'll see, when I lost my mum, 1 minute I was talking to her in the city, and I know she was dying, but I didn't know that she was going to die.
Yeah.
That time, and when the police knocked on my door up, and they said my mum passed away, that you are kind of like, what can I say? You're just blown away because it's like a another world, isn't it, that you're living in.
Yeah, yeah, it
And
is.
'cause I keep saying about the shock and everything. And
Yeah.
Martin just said, "I Steve, when my mum died, it was just another world I was living in. It was like a
Yeah.
wilderness. I was lost. I was incomplete. I lived with my mum for a long time as she was disabled. She passed away a couple of months ago. But the trouble is, luckily for me, I did make a plan, and I
Mm,
did have a will in place and a power of attorney. Thank you
brilliant.
for that. Jane is talking sense. People need to listen. There you go.
Yes, well, thank you very much, everybody. You're a wonderful audience. You're saying all the right things.
um, well, they are. Well done, well done. Can you get that, Jane, again? we will try to. Don't forget, we can't, as long as she's okay for coming back again,
Mhm.
we will ask. Yeah,
Sure, sure.
yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That was really good, Jane. As always, thank you
Pleasure.
so much. I'll get my wife to contact you and.
All right.
Okay, folks. Thank you very much. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Here you go. Okay, I will see you around about 7 o'clock with the lovely, lovely Elizabeth. See you in a bit.